Hey everybody, today we will be reviewing Shudder's new movie Ash, which stars Isa Gonzalez and Aaron Paul and tells the story of a crew of astronauts who go on a terraforming mission on a far-off planet, but realize things have gotten all wrong, and it's up to one lone survivor to put the pieces together of this mystery of how things may or may not have fallen apart. Now, this is a Shudder movie, and Shudder, at least over the last year or so, has had some pretty good releases with In a Violent Nature, Late Night with the Devil, Oddity, and for the most part, they've ranged from, good to pretty good. Nothing spectacular, but, and Ash is in that category. It's good, but like the bare minimum of good. It's not great. And I would definitely, I want to give it a 7. I really do, but realistically it's a 6, it's a good for one viewing going, I like that. And then never touching it again. And, the reason for that is because there are unfortunately a lot of positives as well as a lot of negatives with this movie. So to start off, let's go with a little bit of the negatives. The main star, Isa Gonzalez, she does a very good job with the role. However, in similar to a lot of complaints that Allison Williams' character and Megan had, she just doesn't really fit the role of astronaut. Like, everyone there kind of has a rough around the edges kind of look, except for Flying Lotus's character. But Isa just looks far too pretty, like distractingly so, to the point where it's like you wonder, like, really, this is supposed to be our lead astronaut? Oh, okay. I mean, I've seen what astronauts look like. They usually are more worn down working people, and Isa just looks far too pretty throughout the entirety of the movie. Great performance, but there's a bit of a disconnect. Aaron Paul fits in very well though, but we'll get to those positives in a bit. And then, of course, there are some other problems with the story. There are times where it becomes very derivative and predictable. And like, for example, there's a twist that happens towards the end where it's like you kind of already seen it coming. There was a big lead-in very early in the movie where it's like, oh, I can clearly see where this is going. And of course, despite some pretty good twists and turns, you arrive at the conclusion where you're like, yeah, I saw that was coming. Excuse me. And unfortunately, this movie is a Shudder movie, so the budget is not on the larger side, so there are some effects that don't really work at times, where it's like you're just watching and you're like, oh, that does not look great. So, and then, of course, there are some pacing issues. There are multiple fake out endings where you think, oh, this is where the movie ends. Oh, no, we're still going. Okay, well, this is where the movie ends. Oh, no, we're still going. And at times, there's also weird tonal shifts. Because kind of like the big complaint with Danny Boyle's Sunshine, there are times where it doesn't know if it wants to be like Alien in the Thing, or if it wants to be like a slasher movie, a psychological like thriller. It tries to do a lot, but it just can never really juggle what it is it wants to be. And, of course, there are a lot of cheap jump scares, but that's more of a middle sort of point. Not negative or positive, but just, like there's a lot of cheap scares and you're just like, oh, well, what was that for? Come on, that wasn't necessary. But that's really all the negatives that I have for the movie. The positives, well, despite Isa, like I said, not really fitting the role of an astronaut in a believable manner, she still delivers one hell of a good performance. There's a lot that she does with her eyes, that really sells you on the desperation here. But, and Aaron Paul, too. Aaron Paul does a magnificent job in this movie. And suffice it to say, despite the very, very clearly low budget that this had, there's a lot of really amazing visuals that, despite some of the more iffy VFX, it still holds up quite well. And like I said before, the story does actually take weird twists and turns that I was like, okay, I was not expecting that. And then the third act happens. And I know with the people that I saw it with, the third act is a bit mixed. But the final 10 minutes of this movie, when there's this big reveal, and of course you kind of see it coming, they actually do twist a couple things here and there to the point where it resembles... I'll explain what it resembles because it's a spoiler, but it does go in a route where I was just genuinely, I'm like, oh my God, I actually really enjoy this. And it does deal with some pretty big themes. And despite some of the pacing issues, the way it's structured is rather interesting. You know, I was intrigued from start to finish, despite the fact I'm like, oh my God, this is predictable and a bit derivative. There are times where, you know, I can say I was not bored in the slightest. It engaged me in the way it was structured to where, you know, it waits until the end to give you all the answers. But it does leave little droplets here and there. It's structured really well. And the music, the sound, even the practical effects, when there are some, is ingenious. And there's actually a lot of really interesting world building that they only hint at. Like there is a robot whose job it is to basically work as a medic. And it talks in, I guess, Japanglish, where it's a mix of Japanese and English. And it actually works really well in a believable Blade Runner style fashion. And of course, you know, we learn a bit more about the mission here and the colony that they're trying to set up. And even the little tidbits about this planet and the history behind it is also interesting. There's a lot of mystery and intrigue that you can't help but keep glued to the screen and want to know more. And honestly, by the end of the whole thing, you're just kind of like, okay, well, that was pretty good. That was interesting. Like I said, the movie ends on a high. And it even ends in a way where it's a little open-ended to where if Shudder wants to make a sequel to this, there's a door that's left open. It's not like sequel baity. It just leaves in a way where it's like, oh boy, this could lead to something much bigger than what we got. So, to sum it up, Ash is good. Not great, but good. And it leaves off in a way where I would not be against seeing more. Now, that's where I could end this. Seriously, if you want to leave now, so be it. Go, leave. 6 out of 10, you know, worth a rental or worth just a watch. But I did mention, here's the spoiler bit. So at the very end, it's revealed that that there is a hive mind, a deep and ancient alien evil hive mind that acts parasitically, and eventually it inhabits the dead body of a character that, you know, we saw die, and literally in a almost necromorph from Dead Space fashion, this parasite goes into this dead corpse, brings it alive, and then straight up causes it to, like, this character's corpse to break apart and open up in a very, very awesome gory fashion that is almost one for one like a necromorph from Dead Space. And even then, Isa Gonzalez's character uses essentially what amounts to like almost a flamethrower plasma cutter to dismantle and kill this creature. And even then, the ending hints that the infection that killed this crew also has reached the space station, leaving it open to like a Dead Space style setup. It is interesting. And honestly, it kind of makes me want to see this director tackle a Dead Space movie, because when we get into that mind virus, mind flare kind of story, it is tackled so well, sure, a bit derivatively, but it is tackled so well to the point where it is a bit frightening. There's no jump scare that is accompanied by it. It's just leaving you with this sense of overwhelming fear. And yeah, that is my review. I am now done with this review for Ash. Go see it. I promise you, it is at least well worth one watch.